Good point.
So tonight, we're going to be talking about hypertension, but before we get on to that topic, we want to see if there's any new members or anybody have any input that'd like to share with the group. And if you're a new member, maybe you could just unmute yourself and say, you know, I found out about the classes from either a friend or a doctor or who knows. Maybe we saw an ad in some journal, which I don't think you did because we didn't put any in.
And Charlie, once we have more people, before we get started, I have an announcement too about upcoming events for the Eugene Plant-Based Provider Group.
Yeah, it's exciting events going on. So we'll kind of see if we can get anybody to kind of speak up a little bit before that. Give it another 5 minutes or so and then get started.
I was wondering, are we listed as a pod at all with Plant Powered Nation, Plant Pure Nation, with those folks at all?
We're not. I used to be a pod leader a few years back before I started classes, but it was kind of hard to, it was kind of like a whole separate thing, and there was certain criteria that they wanted you to stay engaged with. And so I had a pod at one time, and then I passed it off to somebody else. Someone passed it to me, and I passed it to somebody else. But it's kind of, there are still pods around, but and kind of we are functioning that way, but they aren't necessarily aware of our group at this point.
For all of you who aren't aware, let's see, that's aside from the Eugene Plant-Based Providers, it's this coming Sunday, Dr. Clapper has a session starting at 4 o'clock. It lasts till about, I think it's an hour-and-a-half session. He's going to be interviewing Dr. John McDougall. I'm planning on going. It's free. You just have, it's online, and it's at Moving Medicine Forward, or do you know the link, Scott, at all? It's,
is it on his it's on his website?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know about it. You'll have to
website.
So he has this Moving Medicine Forward, but there, I think if you just do, I'm going to do that right now, a little Google search. If someone beats me to it, that's okay. With Dr. Clapper and Moving Medicine Forward, see if you can find his site so we can share it with the group.
I see a drclapper.com, www.drclapper.com. I don't know if that's the same thing.
Is Dr. Clapper here in Oregon?
No, he's back on the East Coast. I think maybe Florida or something. Not so easy to find, huh? Okay, in that case, I'm going to go to my email, and I know it's on my email since it's not so easy to find. And here it is. It's his website is, oh no, that's the wrong website. Plant Pure Communities, Plant Pure Communities might be related.
Is that who's sponsoring it? Is that who's sponsoring it? Plant Pure Communities?
It must be. Moving Medicine Forward is what his group is, but there was another link to this, click to register for the May forum. Join our plant-based forum. And I'm just going to see where it said.
I found it. Should I forward the email to Scott?
Yeah, or put it in the
Okay.
chat room.
I don't know how to do that, so I'm going to forward my email to Scott. Okay.
Thank you, Meryl.
All right.
Okay, we'll get this resolved. Yeah, I'd encourage you. I think you'll find it interesting and engaging and well worth your time. Of course, Dr. John McDougall is one of the people who has been promoting whole food, plant-based lifestyle for over 30 years. He's been swimming upstream against the current, against the culture, trying to promote this, and we stand on his shoulders.
Try 50 years, McDougall.
Maybe 50 years, you're right.
Since the mid 70s, yeah.
So he's been at it an awfully long time, and he's been to the state legislatures in California and in Oregon and I don't know where else. And, you know, he's got a wealth of information. So, okay, so we have that. Now, are there any new people to the room who, you know, how were you advised about these classes? And just kind of curious to see how you heard about it and maybe share with others what you hope to get out of the classes. I don't see, all you need to do is just unmute your microphone and you could speak up or you could raise a hand. I'll look for it in here. And it looks like everybody is shy tonight. We don't like to force anybody to do anything. We're not policemen. We don't insist that you eat any certain way. We kind of share the science with you and you make your own decisions. Yes, Mary.
I just have a question. Do you or Scott or anybody, have you heard of Chef Becky? No?
Oh,
I have not.
Okay, well, I'm going to meet her this week, and her website is pretty cool, and she prepares meals any way you want them and delivers them. So I'm kind of interested in that. I need to do something drastic because I'm failing at my process here.
All right. Well, when you find out more information, just pass it along perhaps at one of the next classes.
Yes, I will. Her testimonials are pretty impressive.
Great.
Great. And then
I know of Chef Becky. I used her as a caterer
Yeah.
for events that I was planning. She's absolutely wonderful. You have something great to look forward to.
Great, great. Wonderful. Well, hopefully she's going to cater my 70th birthday party. And then I'm hoping that I can maybe have her do some cooking and delivering meals for me for the time being, because I'm just needing something to do to be successful. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
So I
Anybody
got
else?
this email. Well, I was just going to say I got this email from Merrill, but it doesn't say anything about Dr. McDougall. So I don't know if it's the same one you're talking about. It just says that you're invited to our June forum with Master Coach Howard Jacobson, PhD, addressing a topic of interest to us all: keys of effective coaching. And then
I don't think that's it.
Yeah.
I'll forward the email I got to you, Scott. See if you can
Sorry,
get
I
it.
and then-
apologize. I did send
okay.
you the wrong one. I can't find the one that Dr. Ross was talking about.
Yeah,
Sorry.
he can just email it to me, and then anyone that's interested in it can just directly email me, and I can forward it to whoever wants to go, who's interested in attending.
All right.
Sunday. This coming
It's
Sunday.
this Sunday at 4:00.
Okay.
All right, here it is.
You can just do it later, Charlie. It's okay.
Okay. So I have a quiz for everybody today. What could be the quiz? The quiz is this. I played a couple matches of tennis today. Tomorrow my muscles are going to be sore a little bit. Tomorrow I've got another match. What am I going to do to have my best recovery, to reduce discomfort, to get me into shape the best? What should I do? Anybody have an answer to that?
Yeah, I do. Take a
Okay,
hot
so,
bath in Epsom salt.
okay. That's one possibility is
Say
Good.
hydrate.
hydration is another thought.
Get a good breakfast and eat leafy greens and beans for breakfast.
Leafy greens and beans. Now, I know the greens and beans have calcium, but if you've watched Game Changers and Game Changer, and if you've been listening to a number of these sessions, you may wind up with one category that is going to really make a huge difference in my life.
Carbs.
What is it?
Carbs.
Carbs? Not quite.
I have no idea. I'm stabbing.
Well, I love the fact that you're at least making an attempt. And you know, half the
More
reason,
beans and green leafies.
more greens. Now the greens, they combine with your saliva and improve your nitric oxide, which improves blood flow. And yeah, that potentially could do it. But there is science that shows that there's something you haven't mentioned yet. I know Scott knows, and I know that
I do.
others know, but we haven't heard it yet.
Well, I even watched that video, so I should know.
Beets.
So someone put blueberries in the chat, so they're
Who
on.
put blueberries?
It says Faye.
Faye? Faye, I'm so happy. That's it. It's not only blueberries, but it also could be tart cherry juice, or tart cherries are probably even preferable. So that was a quiz question for tonight. And so instead of eating a half a cup of blueberries for breakfast, today we had a full cup. Tomorrow we'll have another full cup of blueberries. And if I had some tart cherries, I would eat those also. There's a lot of feedback, so I'm gonna have to turn off someone's microphone. And so if your microphone gets turned off, don't get too upset. Just take it as like, okay, that's part of the program. Okay, we're back.
So tell them why blueberries are so good.
Well,
You gotta tell them.
I'm gonna let you carry on with that.
Antioxidants.
Yeah,
Because you're basically, when you have inflammation in your body because of exercise or whatever, you want to all those free radicals that are floating around, you want to neutralize them with antioxidants. So foods that are high on the ORAC list, the oxidized the free radicals as an antioxidant.
and if you want to know which foods, you can go to Gregor's site, nutritionfacts.org, and do, antioxidant. You can plug in there and you'll find a video that shows you the benefits of various fruits and veggies that can, particularly the berries, are a really high source of antioxidants. Okay, that was fun. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about hypertension, but before we do that, Scott has a message about plant-based providers, and we'll go from there.
All right. So yeah, and I see Sean is here too. So, but I'll share my screen here. I'll see if he has it on the website yet, but if not, I'll just show you where it's at. Most of you already know about the Eugene Plant-Based Providers website, which I have a link to it here on the weekly email. So here's the weekly newsletter you get. So you can either get to it just by, so here's the community event coming up for the walk. You guys know about that. And then here's the class website, which I'll go to here in a second, but also the Eugene Plant-Based Provider Group. I have a link to that website directly, but I'll get, so you can click that to go to it directly, but I'll also just go to our website so you can, I can show you where that's at on here. So here's our website. Get this to go down here. There we go. And then I have a link to Eugene Plant-Based Providers right here on the website. You can either click here or click on the picture. That'll take you to the website. And then we have upcoming events here. So you always want to be checking out, save this web page as a favorite just so you can get to it easily, and keep close eye on the upcoming events. We have that here. So let me click on that. And then here's that first conference that's coming up Friday, May 20th. Here's the Plant-Based Providers Walk here in town on Saturday the 21st. And then here we go. So Sean got it up. So he's going to, Sean Egglestone is a dietitian at McKinsey-Willamette Hospital, and he's in our Eugene Plant-Based Providers group along with Karen Booth, who's another dietitian at McKinsey-Willamette. And he's created a sign up here. We're going to do some grocery store tours. So he's got 2 of them scheduled, one for Wednesday, June 8th at 6 o'clock at the Safeway on Coburg Road. And it's limited to 20 people. So you can sign up here, put in your name and your email and click send. And then there's another one available. He's going to do a second one on Saturday, June 11th at the Winco out on Mohawk. So it's the address of that particular Winco is on Olympic Street, but that's just right off Mohawk there. So it's just right there, those of you that know about it. So there's another one. So it's completely free. You can, the dietitians will lead that. I'll try to make it to, for sure, I'll make it to the one at 10 o'clock on Saturday. I might be able to come in the 6 o'clock one. I'll try to get there, but I usually don't get, usually about 6 before I leave work, but I might be able to make it to that one, but it doesn't matter if I'm there. It's not for me, it's for you guys, but it'll be great. Just kind of teach a little bit about food label reading, kind of give just a tour of the store, like what areas to avoid, what areas to focus on, maybe kind of learn about a new fruit or a vegetable that you might not have knew was available before. So it's just a good way to kind of just get together and ask questions, and you'll have a dietitian right there. Anything you want to add, Sean? I don't know if you're you can unmute, you can add anything you'd like to there. If not, that's fine.
Can you hear me, Scott?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, you did a pretty good job. If you guys have any other dates or times that work better for you, you can always just send an email, the contact page through Eugene Plant-Based Providers. And those were just 2 of the locations that I chose. There's a few other Safeways that we could also pick if the Coburg one is just too far away from you. Most of the grocery stores that I've reached out to have been very open and receptive to having us. We do need to keep the group, around 20 people or less, but we can do these as more frequently as the need arises.
Great, thanks, Sean.
We really
You're welcome.
appreciate what you're doing and that you've scheduled those. And you also said that Beets would help me, and you're absolutely right. So not only am I going to have blueberries, but maybe I'm going to add a few beets this week. Anyway, Sean, you've done an amazing job of setting up the website, and we really appreciate it, and scheduling that on a timely basis. And Scott, you too. You've added so much to the website that we're going to have to start offering a certificate for people who make it through the archive sessions with some of the videos or whatever it might be. Sort of like Cornell does.
Yeah, that's been fun to add to the website, add content. And yeah, thanks, Sean, for doing the Eugene Plant-Based Providers one as well. And
and I'm also right now just putting up a podcast page, so that'll be under construction, but it'll be some of the recommended podcasts that have popped up over the last few months.
Great.
Okay, anybody have any other thoughts?
I have a question for Charlie.
Okay,
Did you guys,
Marcia.
yeah, it's Marcia. Did you guys quit the class early this afternoon?
Did we cancel it?
Close early.
Yeah, we closed early. We went from 2 to 3 o'clock, and then I had tennis to take off too, and no one had any other questions. So we decided we would terminate it and come back again next
Oh.
week.
Oh, okay. Because I tried to sound back in, and you guys were gone.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Oh, okay. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Now, tonight we're going to be talking about hypertension. And so you all are anxiously awaiting for some new information and, you know, something that's going to make a difference with high blood pressure as opposed to heart disease or diabetes or cancer or all the other topics we've been talking about. And I don't want to disappoint you, but I want to tell you the message is pretty much the same every week. You know what that message is, yes? Eat more plants, whole plant foods as they're grown in nature. Eat less processed or no processed foods, or very minimally processed whole plant foods, and eat very little animal products to none, might even be best, depending on whether you're trying to reverse heart disease and diabetes or where you are. Doesn't mean you can't eat those things, but you know, if you're looking for your best health and you're not getting it, the more you go on the spectrum toward whole plant foods, the healthier you'll be. So tonight we're going to be talking specifically about hypertension. And are there some slight nuances to it compared to what we've been talking about in the other sessions? Yes. And does it help to have repetition in your life? Perhaps. And that's why we keep doing this. So some of this may be repetitive for you, but you know, I've been listening to these programs now for almost 10 years. And these stories that I hear from people who are making the change to a whole plant food lifestyle are so inspiring that I really don't mind hearing a lot of the information over and over again. And I oftentimes learn something that I've forgotten about 5 or 10 times in my life. So I hope the same for you. So before I share the screen and go on to the first video, I'm going to make one last attempt to see if anybody has any questions. And if the room is quiet, Ken, are you talking? Because your microphone is off. I thought I saw you talking.
How is that?
That works.
I'm trying something new. I've got the computer going and phone, a headphone, and I figured out how to get rid of that what did you call it? Feedback. Anyway, my question is, I'm taking notes. I'm doing too many things at once is what's happening.
Okay.
So you're gonna get some wear and tear today, or you did. And so tomorrow morning, to help continue with recovery and rebuilding whatever you hurt today, and to supercharge it for tomorrow, you're going to eat blueberries. You'd eat tart cherries if you had them, and beets, of course. So you're getting recharged and repaired. What else are they doing to help you get ready to work hard tomorrow?
That's it as far as the food is concerned. And I guess I do some stretching every single day and range of motion and those sorts of things. And of course, throughout the week, I try not to do this, you know, weekend warrior stuff. I try to keep exercising every single day of my life, either walking or using resistance weights on a Bowflex or walking on the treadmill if it's just pouring down rain. So, you know, I sleep every day, Ken, and I eat every day for my health. And so I exercise every day for my health. So I wouldn't encourage you to go out and over-exercise, but get in the habit of doing some regular exercise that you find fun.
My question is, what do those things, blueberries and tart cherries, do to get you ready to work hard tomorrow on the tennis court?
So Scott kind of went over this with the antioxidants.
Yeah, I
These
heard
are
that.
high in antioxidants, and they combine with the free radicals and things that cause damage and inflammation in your body, and it helps you recover faster.
Okay, so in addition to helping prevent or reverse cancer, they help with repairing other tissue or tissue.
Correct.
I never really thought about that before.
Well, that's why we have the classes, why you keep coming.
Yes, I do. I tell
Okay.
everybody it's my favorite hour and a half of the week.
Oh, that's great.
That is great. All right, so let me go ahead and share the screen. We're going to start out with a little hypertension. Some of it's kind of basic, but some of you just are not familiar with it. So we'll kind of start with the basics and then we'll keep progressing from then on. And we're going to go to, I need to go to some program here. I think it's this. And I've got so many files here, it's getting more and more complicated to try to find what I'm looking for. We're going to go over explanation of hypertension and then listen to Neil Bernard next, and then talk about salt.
Blood pressure is equal to the cardiac output, the volume of blood pumped out of the heart per minute, multiplied by the arteriolar resistance. Blood flow depends on the rate of heartbeats and the volume of blood pumped out with each beat. If rate or volume increases, blood pressure goes up. Likewise, increased resistance raises blood pressure, as when arteries downstream from the heart constrict. Over time, high blood pressure or hypertension damages many organs. First, the heart works harder to pump out more blood or against higher resistance. The heart then requires more oxygen and is more susceptible to angina or a heart attack. Second, arteries and arterioles can be damaged. Arterial sclerosis results when blood moves through the vessels at high pressure, damaging the protective cells lining the vessel. White blood cells are drawn to the damaged area and form plaque. Third, kidneys can be damaged. The capillaries of the kidney are delicate. Continually subjected to high blood pressure, they break down, becoming permeable to proteins and other molecules. The kidney's tubules can become clogged, decreasing the kidney's ability to make urine. Also, the proteins injure the capillaries' membranes, causing more damage and worsening the situation. Fourth, the retina of the eye can be injured if its delicate capillaries are damaged. Localized hemorrhages can occur, causing scarring and formation of new, more fragile capillaries to replace the old ones. Finally, the blood vessels of the brain can be injured. High blood pressure can cause clots to break off from atherosclerotic plaques, blocking blood flow to the rest of the brain. This is called a thrombotic stroke. Continual exposure to high blood pressure may also cause a blood vessel to burst, leading to a hemorrhagic stroke.
So a quick summation is high blood pressure can silently affect a number of organ systems in your body: brain, heart, eyes, lungs, kidneys. And that's a pretty significant problem when you wind up with heart attacks and strokes and loss of kidney function and wind up on dialysis. So I kind of like the analogy in my mind. The analogy goes something like this. If you have your garden hose and you turn the water on And there's a nozzle at the end of the garden hose, which is keeping it kind of restricted. The pressure continues on in this hose and it will get stiff and break much sooner than if you relieve the pressure intermittently. So it's the same way with the arteries in your body. If your pressure stays up higher, they'll get stiffer sooner. They may rupture or crack, form plaque, and lead to serious medical problems. Now, Dr. Esselstyn says that if you eat a lot of dark green leafies, that combined with your saliva, they produce nitric oxide, and that will keep your arteries running smooth. It's sort of like it lubricates them in a sense. So he recommends for those people with end-stage heart disease to be eating dark green leafies, half a handful, maybe 6 times a day. I don't personally eat 6 times a day, but if someone had end-stage heart disease, I'd encourage them to follow what Dr. Esselstyn, one of the people who has demonstrated reversal of heart disease. And remember, only 2 studies in the world literature have demonstrated reversal of heart disease. Dr. Dean Ornish in California and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic. So let's go on to Dr. Neil Bernard and his take on hypertension.
Your heart takes a pounding. So important, because if your blood pressure... Hi, today we're going to talk about a healthy blood pressure, and that is so important because if your blood pressure is too high, your heart takes a pounding. It's hard on your kidneys. It's hard on all of your body. So how do you have a healthy blood pressure, and what does it mean? Well, hypertension means too much pressure in the arteries, and it's usually reported as 2 numbers, like 120/80. Well, that first number, the 120, that's called systolic blood pressure, and that means the pressure that is in your arteries during a heartbeat. The second number, that 80, that's called diastolic, and that's the pressure between the beats when your heart is relaxing. So your blood pressure goes up to 120, down to 80, up to 120, down to 80 with each beat of the heart. Make sense? Now, an ideal blood pressure is anything below about 120/80. How do I get there? Well, if your blood pressure is too high, the first step that your doctor probably told you about was to reduce salt, sodium. And doing that's a good idea. If you get down to 2 grams of sodium per day, or 1.5 grams, which some of them are now saying, well, that will reduce your blood pressure a little bit. Now, that's not much salt. That's less than a teaspoon per day. Many people, though, are a little bit disappointed. They lower their salt intake and their blood pressure doesn't fall very far. So go a little bit further. If you pump up the vegetables and fruits, they don't have much sodium. They have a lot of potassium, and potassium helps lower your blood pressure. So lower salt, high vegetables and fruits. But you know, fatty foods play a part here too. And it seems like we've been talking about fatty foods for so many things. Well, when people get away from fat, their blood pressure falls. How can that be? When I was a kid growing up, my mother used to cook bacon for her 5 kids. She would take the hot bacon strips out of the pan and she'd put them on a paper towel to drain, and then she would take that hot pan filled with grease and pour it into a jar to save the bacon grease. But you know, she didn't put that jar in the refrigerator. She just put it on the shelf because she knew that as that bacon grease cools down, what happens? It turns into a solid fat, and you don't need to refrigerate that. Well, in your body, that solid fat does something to the viscosity of your blood, the thickness of your blood. What I mean is, if you're eating a lot of animal fat, and I measure your blood, a blood sample, it's actually more viscous, more thick, more like oil, less like water than it ought to be. If, on the other hand, you get the meat and cheese and fatty foods out of your diet, what happens? Your blood viscosity improves. Your blood flows more like water, less like grease. That's good for a lot of things. Athletes say, you know, this gives me more energy, but a person with high blood pressure says, you know, my blood pressure is coming down. So get away from the fatty foods. Your blood viscosity, your blood thickness drops a little bit. That's good. Weight loss helps. That's obvious. If you're not carrying around so much weight, it's pretty easy to get the blood to flow through your body without a lot of pressure, and exercise helps too. Now let me zero in for just a minute on a study called the DASH study. This was the Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension study, DASH. And in the first part of the study, they compared a control group, people following their normal diet, to a group they called the fruits and vegetables group. They asked them to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. So look at the numbers. The group that was asked to eat more fruits and vegetables really did. A lot more fruits, more vegetables, and not much in the way of other changes in their diet. But if we looked at what happened, because they were eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, their systolic blood pressure dropped by a good 7 points, and their diastolic pressure almost 3 points. So the lesson here is bringing in those fruits and vegetables is good. But then they went a step further, and they asked a third group to follow something they called the DASH diet. And it had a lot of fruits and a lot of vegetables, but it also cut back on the meat. You see that down there? And the oils were reduced as well. And when you put that together, what happened? Well, their systolic blood pressure was cut by a good 11 points, and their diastolic pressure was cut by about 5 points. So what this shows us is that boosting the vegetables and fruits, that's good. That's about half the power of the DASH diet. But reducing the fatty foods, the meats, the oils, that's the other half. You put that together, you've got a good recipe. So let's review. To reduce our blood pressure, we want to reduce sodium. That means cut back on salt. And you can increase potassium simply by bringing the vegetables and fruits into our diet. And if you reduce the bad fats, get away from animal fats, keep all oils really low, that has a really good effect on our blood viscosity. Weight loss is good, exercise is good, and you put it all together, you can have a healthy blood pressure. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop there for a moment before we talk about the evidence that salt raises blood pressure, and see if there's anybody who has any questions about high blood pressure at this moment in time. Any thoughts from anyone? We'll go to the gallery, see if there's anybody who has a hand, or just unmute yourself and speak up.
I've heard that meditation might help too, a calm attitude.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Stress has a lot to do with your fight or flight mechanism, where your body kicks out adrenaline because you want to be able to run away from the lion who's chasing you. And so, you know, as your heart beats faster and stronger, your blood pressure goes up. So if you're able to keep calm yourself and reduce the stress in your life through meditation or yoga or group therapy or counseling or doing fun activities. So that's an excellent point that you make. Anybody else?
Is Nancy raising her hand?
Nancy? I don't know.
Yes, I think my lamp is kind of right behind my hand. It makes it difficult to see. I'm living proof on this because I have been doing this for how many years? I don't know, since I first met Scott. And I was on 2 blood pressure medications at the time, and I don't take them at all now. And I can check my blood pressure, which I do all the time, and it's really good. You know, unless I do something bad, like maybe have some salty something. So I just stay away from that. And I have increased the fruits and vegetables, of course, into my diet. Don't eat meat, any animal protein at all. And it works. I just want to say it works. Yes.
Nancy, thank you, because, you know, your stories are probably have so much more meaning than us just, you know, standing or sitting here and saying, follow the science, you know, do something different with your life. It works, but, you know, it's so much more powerful when someone's had personal experience like you have. I don't know if there are others.
Yeah, and the energy too. I mean, I have so much more energy. I'm 75. I go constantly. I'm burning my candle at both ends pretty much of the time, and it's just fine. It's just fine. I have the energy to do everything I need and want to do. So it's all good, folks.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I've definitely taken a lot of, that's probably one of the most common medications I remove from patients as they're improving their diet and lifestyle is getting rid of the blood pressure medicines. It's so rewarding to be able to do that, having actually de-prescribing medications instead of just adding more.
I have a question. How long does it take before your blood pressure gets normal?
It's a it's a lot of variation to that. So there's a lot of factors in that. So a lot of it has to do with how sick somebody is, how stiff their arteries are, how much plaque's in the arteries, how much diet change and lifestyle change they've done. So there's a lot of factors in that. So definitely hard to say. I've had patients where within a week or two, I've had to take them off blood pressure medicines, and I've had people that have been making changes for a year, and we're still trying to lower the medications. And I think some of the things I see just through experience doing this with patients for the last 9 years is that I've actually had patients where it's really interesting, and I know there's not a lot of science behind this, but where I'll see patients, their blood pressure will come down a little bit, but not enough to where I take them off any of their medication yet. But then they're still losing weight, they're still feeling great, they're still making changes, their cholesterol's dropping, blood sugar's dropping, they're really getting healthy, but their blood pressure is still kind of staying, right in the normal range, 120/80, 130/80, right about there, but not low enough to where I'd say, okay, I need to take you off your medication. And what I tend to see sometimes is when they start to get dizzy and whatnot, when they stand and stuff, even though their blood pressure is still 120/80, 130/80, and then I actually reduce their dose of their medication, and their blood pressure comes down a little bit, which seems counterintuitive. And I've actually talked to a couple other physicians about this before that they're experienced in lifestyle medicine. And kind of the theory behind it is that there's kind of this compensation. Your blood vessels, your body is protecting, trying to maintain the blood pressure by constricting because of basically the stimulus that the medication is providing, the blood pressure medication, and it's almost like a compensation trying to constrict to protect your blood pressure because your brain needs to keep perfused. And so if your blood pressure drops too low, that's not so good. And so removing that stimulus, lowering the blood pressure medicine sometimes will help people drop their blood pressure a little bit, but it doesn't happen every time. It's definitely something you have to really work with your doctor about, but I have seen that quite a few times. Interestingly, I don't know if you've seen that at all, Charlie.
That's a good point. I don't know that I have. I've recognized that. I do know that I agree with you that there are a certain number of people who they're really improving in all these areas and their blood pressure seems to stay up. And, it's been a couple of years since I've been actively treating patients, and I just started in again. And so I'll keep that in mind. I'm going to keep reducing the medicines though.
And like Dr. McDougall says, it is a bit of it's a reaction the body has to increase the blood pressure to keep perfusing the organs and keep perfusing everything because of all the resistance, how sick the blood vessels are, how sick the body is. The body has to constrict the blood vessels more to actually perfuse, to try to pump upstream, pump against that resistance. And so it's kind of a compensation. And so you have to really heal the body and heal the blood vessels so that you perfuse your organs and your brain at a lower blood pressure, because normal blood pressure, here's a little caveat, we used to call it, back even when I was in PA school, I'm sure when Charlie was in medical school, it was the same way. We actually were taught it's called essential hypertension. So we were taught the term essential hypertension because the thought at the time was we need to increase our blood pressure as we age to actually perfuse our organs, and that was where that term came from. But we realize when we study healthy populations, the blood pressure actually drops as we age. And so if you look at like blue zone populations or populations where they don't have any heart disease, like the Indians in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, or in the Tarahumara in the Copper Canyon in Northwest Mexico, where they have zero heart disease amongst their tribes, you actually look and, okay, so when they're children, their blood pressure average is about 120/80. When they're in their 60s and 70s, their average blood pressure is 110/70, actually lower. And so their blood pressure goes down as they age. when that's a sign of healthy blood vessels. And so a normal blood pressure is 110/70 really on no medication. You have healthy blood vessels. But when we have patients on medication, we don't want it to go below 120/80 because that actually leads to decreased perfusion, and it leads to heart arrhythmias and complications. And there's actually lots of studies that show that the lower you drive the blood pressure to a certain point, you actually increase your chance of death. And so it's really important that we, as clinicians, we treat patients' blood pressure down to only to 120/80, to 120/80, 130/80, not lower than that. But so that's really important. But yeah, I just wanted to add that bit. But I would say in the vast majority, probably 90 to 95% of the patients that I do this with, their blood pressure comes right down, and I need to actually reduce or take them off their medications, because I usually will ask my patients, hey, you're getting dizzy when you stand at all? They'll come in and see me in the clinic, and their blood pressure's 110/70, 120/80, right around there. And I say, okay, yeah, oh yeah, I have gotten dizzy a little bit when I stand up. And so then I reduce their dosage or sometimes just eliminate a medication.
Thanks for reviewing that, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna continue on with another couple videos here, and high blood pressure may be a choice, and the evidence that salt raises blood pressure.
Like any group with vested interests, the food industry resists regulation. Faced with a growing scientific consensus that salt increases blood pressure, major food manufacturers have adopted desperate measures to try to stop governments from recommending salt reduction. Rather than reformulate their products and save lives, manufacturers have lobbied governments, refused to cooperate, encouraged misinformation campaigns, and tried to discredit the evidence. After all, salt is the main source of flavor in processed foods. Of course, they could improve the flavor by adding real ingredients, but like making a Pop-Tart with actual strawberries would be more expensive, cut into profits. The evidence that they're trying to discredit includes double-blind, randomized trials dating back decades. You take people with high blood pressure, put them on a sodium-restricted diet, and their blood pressure drops. Then if you keep them on a low-salt diet and add a placebo, nothing happens. But if you instead give them salt in the form of a time-release sodium pill secretly, their blood pressure goes back up. And the more sodium you secretly slip them, the higher their blood pressure climbs. Even just a single meal can do it. If you take people with normal blood pressure, give them a bowl of soup containing the amount of salt a regular meal might contain, and your blood pressure goes up over the next 3 hours compared to the same soup with no added salt. Why, though? High blood pressure appears to be our body's way to push out excess salt out of our system. Dozens of such studies have been done, showing that if we reduce our salt intake, we can reduce our blood pressure, and the greater the reduction, the greater the benefit. The so-called DASH diet, which I've covered before, commonly used to capture the blood pressure benefits of a more plant-based diet. But how do we know the benefits had anything to do with eating less salt instead of just eating more fruits and vegetables? Because it was put to the test. Sure, eating healthier lowers blood pressure no matter how much salt we eat, but even if we stick to the same diet, lowering salt helps independently of other dietary improvements. You can do this on a community level. You take two matched villages that both start out about the same. In the control village, on average, blood pressures went up or stayed the same. But in the village where they were able to cut down on salt intake, blood pressures went down. Whereas if we don't cut down, chronic high salt intake can lead to a gradual increase in blood pressure throughout life, as shown in the famous InterSalt study. 52 centers from 32 countries participated with hundreds of participants each, and 4 of those centers were in populations that ate so little salt they actually complied with the American Heart Association guidelines for salt reduction. Something less than 1% of Americans achieve. In a population where everyone makes the cutoff, not a single case of high blood pressure was found, not one case of high blood pressure. But not only that, the older folks had the same blood pressure as the teenagers. This is why including such populations is so important. If you just look at the 48 centers in the industrialized Western world, there does not appear to be any relationship between rising blood pressure with age and how much sodium people are getting every day, right? It just looks like a random assortment of dots. Now, the salt industry looks at this and says, aha, see, I told you so, no relationship between salt and increasing blood pressures as you get older. But maybe that's because they're all getting too much salt. The American Heart Association recommendation is that everyone get their salt intakes under here. So they're all way over. You can imagine a similar result if this was instead lung cancer rates versus packs of cigarettes smoked every year. Whether you smoked 150 packs a year or 200 packs a year, it might not make much of a difference. To see a relationship between smoking and cancer, you'd have to compare smokers to those who rarely light up. And indeed, if you add in those low-salt populations that get little or no high blood pressure as they get older, and you end up with a highly statistically significant relationship between increasing sodium and increasing blood pressure. But only if you include people that actually comply with the SALT guidelines. As with so many lifestyle interventions, they only work if you actually do it.
So let's stop for a moment and see how you can actually do it. So where does the salt come from in your diet? Is it the salt that you're adding at the table? Or is it the sodium and salt that you're getting in your foods? And how many of you are aware of the sodium phosphate that's injected into chicken?
I don't eat chicken.
Well, if you're not eating chicken, that's
Me.
the good answer.
They do that and laugh because they're saying it's value added for them.
Yeah.
They do it to increase the weight of the product, so they can get more money for the by weight. But it's just
It
salt
also
water.
really enhances the taste.
It plumps them up so they look better.
All right. So I think you all understand that concept. Now we're going to continue on with high blood pressure, maybe a choice.
For the first 90% of our evolution, we ate diets containing less than a quarter teaspoon of salt a day, because for the first 90% of our evolution, we ate mostly plants. We went millions of years without salt shakers, and so our bodies evolved into salt-conserving machines, which served us well until we discovered salt could be used to preserve foods. Without refrigeration, this is a big boon to human civilization. Of course, this may have led to a general rise in blood pressure, but who cares if the alternative is starving to death because all your food rotted away? But where does that leave us now, when we no longer have to live off pickles and jerky? We are genetically programmed to eat 10 times less salt than we do now. Even many low-salt diets can be considered high-salt diets. That's why it's critical to understand what the concept of normal is when it comes to salt. Having a normal salt intake can lead to a normal blood pressure, which can help us die from all the normal causes, like heart attacks and strokes. And doctors used to be taught that a normal systolic blood pressure is approximately 100 plus H. Systolic blood pressure means the top number. And indeed, that's about what we're born with. Babies start out with a blood pressure around like 95/60. But then as we age, that 95 can go to 120 by our 20s, then 140 by our 40s, the official cutoff for high blood pressure, and keep climbing as we age. That was considered normal, since everyone's blood pressure creeps up as we get older, and if that's normal, then heart attacks and strokes are normal too, since risk starts rising once we start getting above the 100 we had as a baby. But if blood pressures over 100 are associated with disease, maybe they should be considered abnormal, perhaps caused by our abnormally high salt intake, 10 times more than what our bodies were designed to handle. Maybe if we just ate a natural amount of salt, our blood pressures naturally would not go up with age, and we'd be protected. Of course, to test that theory, you'd have to find a population in modern times that doesn't use salt or eat processed food or go out to eat. For that, you'd have to go deep into the Amazon rainforest. Meet the Yanomamo people, a no-salt culture. Lowest salt intake ever reported, which is to say normal for our species salt intake. And so what happens to their blood pressure? They start out with a blood pressure of about 100 over 60, and end up with a blood pressure of about 100 over 60. Though theirs is described as a salt-deficient diet, that's like saying they have a diet deficient in Twinkies. They're the ones, it seems, eating normal salt intakes, apparently leading to truly normal blood pressures. Those in their 50s having the blood pressure of a 20-year-old. The percentage of the population tested that had high blood pressure? 0. Whereas elsewhere in Brazil, up to 38% of the population may be affected. The Yanomamos probably represent the ultimate human example of the importance of salt on blood pressure. But look, it could have been other factors. They didn't drink alcohol, ate a high-fiber plant-based diet, lots of exercise, no obesity. There's a number of plant-based populations eating little salt that experience no rise in blood pressure as they age, so how do we know what exactly is to blame? Ideally, we do an interventional trial. Imagine if you took people literally dying from out-of-control high blood pressure, so-called malignant hypertension, where you go blind from bleeding into your eyes, your kidneys shut down, your heart fails, and then you withhold from those people blood pressure medication, so their fate is certain death, and then you put them on a Yanomamo level of salt intake, a normal for human species salt intake. And if instead of dying they walked away cured of their hypertension, that would pretty much seal the deal. Enter Dr. Walter Kempner and his rice and fruit diet. Patients coming in with blood pressures of 210 over 140, dropping down to 80 over 60. Now, the reason he could ethically withhold all modern blood pressure medications and treat with diet alone? The drugs hadn't been invented yet. This was back in the 1940s. Now, the diet wasn't just extremely low salt, but strictly plant-based, extremely low fat, protein, calories, but there's no doubt that Kempner's rice diet achieved remarkable results, and Kempner is now remembered as the person who demonstrated beyond any shadow of a doubt that high blood pressure can often be lowered with a low enough salt diet. 40 years ago, it was acknowledged that the evidence is very good, if not conclusive, that a low enough reduction of salt in the diet would result in the prevention of essential hypertension, that rising of blood pressure as we age, and its disappearance is a major public health problem. It looks like we knew how to stop this 4 decades ago. In that time, how many people have died? Today, high blood pressure may wipe out 400,000 Americans every year. 1,000 unnecessary deaths every day.
So I'm going to play one last video, then I'll open it up to see if you have any questions. How to treat high blood pressure with diet.
High blood pressure ranks as the #1 risk factor for death and disability in the world. Previously, I showed how a plant-based diet may prevent high blood pressure, but what if you already have it? The American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend as the first-line treatment lifestyle modification. If that doesn't work, you can start the patient on a thiazide diuretic or water pill. and then you keep piling on the meds until you get their blood pressure down. Commonly, people end up on 3 drugs, though researchers are experimenting with 4 at a time, and some people end up on 5. Why not just jump straight to the drugs? Well, they don't treat the underlying cause, and they can cause side effects. Less than half of patients stick with even the first-line drugs, perhaps due to the adverse effects such as erectile dysfunction, fatigue, and muscle cramps. So, what are these recommended lifestyle changes? They recommend to control one's weight, salt, and alcohol intake, engage in regular exercise, and adopt a DASH eating plan. The DASH diet has been described as a lacto-vegetarian diet, but it's not. It emphasizes fruits and vegetables and low-fat dairy, but just a reduction in meat. Why not vegetarian? We've known for decades that food of animal origin is highly significantly associated with blood pressure. In fact, if you take vegetarians and you give them meat, you can watch their blood pressures go right up. I've talked about how there are benefits to getting blood pressure down as low as 110/70, but who can get that low? Populations eating plant-based diets, like in rural China, about 110/70 their whole lives, with the meat only eaten on special occasions, or rural Africa, where the elderly have perfect blood pressure as opposed to hypertension. In the Western world, as the American Heart Association has pointed out, the only folks really getting down that low were the strict vegetarians, coming out at about 110/65. So when they created the DASH diet, were they just not aware of this landmark research done by Harvard's Frank Sachs? No, they were aware. The chair of the design committee that came up with the DASH diet was Dr. Sachs. In fact, the DASH diet was explicitly designed with the #1 goal of capturing the blood pressure-lowering benefits of a vegetarian diet, yet contain enough animal products to make it palatable to the general public. In fact, Sachs found that the more dairy the lacto-vegetarians ate, the higher their blood pressures. But they had to make the diet acceptable. Research has since shown that it's the added plant foods, not the changes in oil, sweets, or dairy, that appears to be the critical component, so why not eat plant-based? Recent meta-analysis showed vegetarian diets were good, but strictly plant-based diets may be better. Vegetarian diets in general confer protection against cardiovascular disease, some cancers, and death, but completely plant-based diets seem to offer additional protection for obesity, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease mortality. Based on a study of 89,000 people, those eating meat-free diets appeared to cut their risk of high blood pressure 55%, but those eating meat-free, egg-free, and dairy-free had 75% lower risk. If, however, you're already eating a whole food plant-based diet, no processed foods, no table salt, and you're still not hitting 110/70, there are a few foods recently found to offer additional protection. Ground flax seeds, a few tablespoons a day, induce one of the most potent antihypertensive effects ever achieved by a dietary intervention, 2 to 3 times more powerful than instituting an aerobic endurance exercise program. Watermelon also appears to have extraordinary effects, but you'd have to eat like 2 pounds a day. Sounds like my kind of medicine, but it's hard to get year-round. Red wine may help, but only if the alcohol has been taken out. Raw vegetables or cooked? And the answer is both, though raw may work better. Beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils may help a little. Kiwi fruits, though, don't seem to work at all, even though the study was funded by a kiwi fruit company. Maybe they should have taken direction from the California Raisin Marketing Board, who came out with this study showing raisins can reduce blood pressure, but only, apparently, compared to fudge cookies, Cheez-Its, and Chips Ahoy.
Okay.
So I love that Frank. I'll say I love that Frank Sachs story. Does anybody else find that patronizing? That they just said, well, a completely whole food plant-based diet would give you the best blood pressure lowering, but we got to make it palatable to the general population. So so it's kind of like, that's where Charlie and I come in. We just show you what the science says and let you make the decision, instead of having a DASH diet that says, well, people aren't going to eat a whole food plant-based diet, so let's add a few foods, some animal products, some low-fat dairy, so that more people will follow it. And in one sense, I get it, because if you're looking at it from a population standpoint, if you get more people to adopt the DASH diet than a whole food plant-based diet, you're going to probably lower more people's blood pressure than if you tell everyone, well, you have to eat a 100% whole food plant-based diet because that's the best. Less people would probably do it. So then you lower less people's blood pressure. Does that kind of make sense? And so I get it from that standpoint, but if you look at it at face value, it's kind of patronizing, right? They're making the decision for you rather than just telling you what the science says and let you make the decision for yourself. And that's what Charlie and I do in these classes every week is, what's the science say? You make a decision for yourself based on what the science says.
A point I've heard a few times, Gregor talk about flax seeds lowering blood pressure. I've never yet incorporated that in any attempts or people who are having trouble, because most of the time the people who are having trouble are not doing 100% whole food plant-based, and so I'm spending my time on that. But there are maybe one or two in this room who are having trouble with their blood pressure, might consider increasing the flax seeds from a tablespoon to, he said, what, 3 tablespoons, I think.
Right. And also beets, there was a study that Dr. Greger had in one of his videos on beets that, because of the nitrates that they contain, dilates blood vessels, lowers blood pressure. And they actually did a randomized controlled trial of beets. They used it in a beet powder form in a capsule, did a randomized controlled trial, beet powder versus captopril, which captopril is an ACE inhibitor. It's one of the blood pressure medications. And it was just as good. It wasn't better, but it lowered blood pressure just as much as the blood pressure pill, which is incredible. No side effects, only good side effects. So eating beets as well.
I was told once a number of years ago that the reason that, and this was a doc that was telling me this, the reason that they don't talk about diet in changes because they really underestimate, I think, that people will actually do it. So Scott, you called it patronizing, but there a lot of docs are built in 10-minute increments and there's no time to teach anybody anything really. So it's nice to see it changing.
Yeah, because they definitely don't know. I mean, I guarantee you 99% of docs out there don't know anything about what the nutrition can do for blood pressure. They have no clue. They weren't taught in medical school. So it's not patronizing for the doctor that's counseling you in the office because they just don't know. Where what I find patronizing is something like Frank Sachs and developing the DASH diet, knowing that you could actually lower blood pressure more by following a whole food plant-based diet versus the DASH diet, and just saying, well, but we're trying to get more people to do it. So it's like, in one sense, I get it, but at the same sense, it's, to me, it's patronizing if you look at it from each individual person. Don't they deserve to know what the science says and let them decide?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, I think a lot of providers have asked me, Charlie, how can you get a patient to change what they're eating? We can't even get them to take blood pressure medicine and cholesterol lowering medicine. It's like,
exactly.
They have not, they've not benefited from making changes in their own life. And so they find it difficult to spend a few moments really being enthusiastic and passionate about encouraging their patients to take on healthy eating, healthy lifestyle. And so the problem here, in my mind, is more education, not so much lack of time during a visit.
Yeah.
I know in 10 or 15 minutes, I can do a lot. I just don't spend a lot of time on all the other miscellaneous issues that are normally felt to be the most important.
Well, and for me, I'll say the other thing I wanted to add is, I've practiced medicine for 17 years, and And never once have I gotten a hug from a patient when I lowered their blood pressure or their cholesterol or blood sugar with medication. But I get lots of hugs from patients when they lower their blood pressure, their cholesterol and their blood sugar with diet and lifestyle change, because you empower them to do it. They take control of their health. They feel better, and they know they're getting healthier rather than just treating symptoms with the medication.
I remember the days when, a doctor would examine you and get done examining you, light his cigarette and talk to you about the pills he's going to give you.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was about the time I graduated from school.
I have a question again.
Yes.
He said,
Marcia.
he said normal blood pressure is 110/70.
Yeah.
Mine was 120/80 today at the doctor. So is that?
I'd say that's pretty normal, having been eating the standard American diet for so many years. That's a wonderful blood pressure reading for you.
Okay.
So be encouraged.
Oh, yeah.
If you were living with the Yanomami Indians or in the blue zones your whole life, then 110/70 would be likely your blood pressure.
Okay.
To death.
Okay.
Hey, Charlie, I got a little experience.
Okay.
I had an annual visit with a cardiologist or his PA yesterday. And I took them blood work because I had it done prior to going, so they'd have something to look at because they didn't request any of that. But before I left, I took my blood pressure and it was 119/62. Now that's not an everyday occurrence, but it's been dropping occasionally like that. I've had some 108s, 118.
Nice.
It's getting better, but it's still probably averaging in the 130s.
Yep.
But and there's some things I can do probably to help that after today's class. Things I haven't really wanted to do totally. Anyway, I got to the office. The nurse took my blood pressure. It was 172/62.
Yeah.
And then when 20 minutes later, they took it again. It was 160/62.
Probably the wrong size cuff.
Well, I don't know whose cuff was wrong, but I know I get anxious going in there because I had another bad experience at going in on another occasion. Just thinking about going to that office, that building, increases my blood pressure.
Yeah, it raises your level of anxiety and your body kicks out adrenaline, epinephrine, and cortisone, and
but it's also
even later in the day I took it and it was still a bit high. I was anxious from that whole visit because of
But it's really true. If the blood pressure cuff is too big, your pressure will be lower. If it's too small, your pressure will be higher.
That's true. We also treat patients' blood pressure with medication more based on their home blood pressures than what they are in the office, because it's dangerous to actually treat it. If someone's like, 110/70, 120/80 at home, even if they're on medication, and then they're 140/90, 160/90 in the clinic, you don't want to treat it based on what it is in the clinic. You want to treat it what it is at home and take averages and go off that, because if you do that, then when you go home, you're going to be 110/70, 100/60, get dizzy when you stand up, and increase your risk of problems.
Yeah, I'm getting some dizzy occasionally and throughout the day because I'm busy all day, and once in a while when I'll take a little break, I'll go ahead and get up again. Well, I'll get a little dizzy, but interestingly, the lab work I took in was good. My numbers are going down. They're all good. My primary care doctor thinks they're great. So I asked him, I says, now listen, since these numbers are good and the blood pressure, I didn't mention blood pressure, but if these numbers continue down, what's the chance we can start taking me off some of the medications? Because the cardiologists have given me some that I'm on. But he said, oh no, we can never do that.
Yeah, no, that's what you need.
With your history, there's no chance, no way we could ever do that, and especially with the blood pressure you had today. I wouldn't even begin to think
Right.
about it.
Right. So, but they need to know, I mean, so you need, you need to be documenting how often you're getting blood pressures below 120/80 at home, and that you're getting some dizziness upon standing, because hearing that, the more that happens, the more likely you do need to have your blood pressure medication reduced, not maybe eliminated, but reduced.
I
I'm
agree.
sure I'm going to talk with my primary care doctor when I see him again. I'm sure that we'll come to a better understanding than the cardiologist's office I'm going to. Because,
We'd like to change cardiology.
Sounds like a good plan.
I'm thinking about maybe even changing him, because they're not plant-based idea. Neither one of the doctors are. It's the same office building where Tuliani works, and the same group that he's with.
And we would like him. He's helped us more in the hospital and everything else. The ideas that he has given us has worked, but the other doctors don't listen.
What keeps you from transitioning or transferring?
Changing? Well, it's just come. I've just decided to maybe do that. So that's
okay.
I'm gonna his throat.
I'm gonna work through my primary care doctor and see if I can't make some changes there. Because
okay,
what I have is I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to go cut my throat, because they've taken care of me and kept me alive. So
right.
I'm not afraid to change, but I want to just. I don't want to.
Close any doors is what he doesn't want
close
to
any
do.
doors either. Because
I get it.
But it was just a kind of a strange experience yesterday, because my blood pressure has been down, and I've experienced some of the things Scott was talking about with the dizziness and the blood pressure, not quite dropping as far as I'd like, but dropping. So I don't know. There may be some stuff going on there too. So anyway, I love this class tonight. This is one of my favorites. I made a point to be here.
All right, make sure you're staying hydrated, that your urine is light yellow to almost clear.
Yeah. Drink lots of water around here.
Okay, good. Nancy, did you have your hand up?
I did. I wanted to share with Virgil that my blood pressure right now is 118/63. So.
Yeah, go ahead and brag, Nancy.
But it's good.
I'm not going to take mine.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Evie and Doug.
Yeah, I have an interesting situation, which I'm going to be talking with my primary doctor about on Friday. My blood pressure historically has always been extremely low. I'm like 100/60, sometimes 90/50. I'm 72 years old, and I've, consistently had really, really low blood pressure. I started whole food plant-based diet, I don't know, 18 months ago, 19 months ago. And 3 months ago, I saw my cardiologist, and my blood pressure is up. It's 150/100. And so he put me on blood pressure medication. And I talked to them about it and said, I don't want to do that. And he insisted that I do it. So I went ahead and did it. So currently I am taking it. I'm just curious if you've had experience with people that have had low blood pressure and then they go on the plant-based diet, and then for some reason their blood pressure goes up. What would cause that? And I'll talk with my doctor in detail about my specifics Friday, but I'd be interested in any thoughts that the two of you have.
Well, my thoughts initially, and then I'll let Scott talk, but my initial thought is it's a one-time reading that your doctor did in the office, and I wouldn't put you on medicine for a one-time reading like that. I would be monitoring your blood pressure at home with home monitoring before I made a decision to start you on medicine. Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. Anyone have an increase in blood pressure when they change to a plant-based diet. I guess the only thing would be if you're eating any processed oils, any processed vegan foods with the oils and salt, and eating out at restaurants. Those would be things where maybe if you weren't eating those things before, but eating standard American diet, but not eating anything processed, that could potentially raise the blood pressure. But I've never seen anybody actually go up on their blood pressure when they change their diet.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you. I just was curious if you knew of anything.
Do you do home blood pressure monitoring?
I haven't been, and I think I probably will start doing that, you know.
I think that that would be a wise thing for you to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, if you were maybe dehydrated during that visit, your body was compensated, you know, it's a one-time visit. You don't start people on medicine like that without confirmation, in my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hopefully I'll have better news next week.
Yeah.
Okay. I just have one or so more videos to share and see if we have any other questions. Shaking the salt habit, and then Kempner rice diet. I want to play these two for you because they're kind of cute. At least the second one is.
The two most prominent dietary risks for death and disability in the world are not eating enough fruit and eating too much salt. Too little fruit kills nearly 5 million people every year. Too much salt kills 4 million. There are 3 things we can do to lower our salt intake. First, don't add salt at the table. A third of us add salt to our food before even tasting it. Number 2, stop adding salt when cooking. At first, the food will taste bland. 2 to 4 weeks later, however, as the sensitivity of the salt taste receptors in the mouth become more sensitive to the taste of salt in the usual concentrations. Believe it or not, but after 2 weeks you may actually prefer the taste of food with less salt. Some of the flavorings you can use instead in the meanwhile, instead of salt, include using more pepper, onion, garlic, tomato, sweet peppers, basil, parsley, thyme, celery, and lime, chili, nettle, rosemary, smoke flavor, curry, coriander, and lemon. Even if you did add salt, though, it's probably better than eating out, where even at non-fast food restaurants they tend to pile it on. And finally, avoid processed foods that have salt added. In most countries, only about half of sodium intake comes from processed foods, so there's more personal responsibility. But in the US, even if we completely stopped adding salt in the kitchen and dining room, it would still only bring down salt intake a small fraction. This has led public health commentators to note how challenging it is then for everyone to reduce their salt intake, since so much of our sodium intake is out of our control. But is it? We don't have to buy all those processed foods. We can choose not to turn over our family's health to food corporations that may not have our best interests at heart. If we do buy processed foods, there are 2 tricks we can use. Try to only buy foods with fewer milligrams of sodium on the label than there are grams in the serving size. So if it's a 100-gram serving size, it should have less than 100 milligrams of sodium. Or you can shoot for fewer milligrams of sodium than there are calories. For example, here the sodium is 720, calories are 260. 720 is greater than 260, so this has too much sodium. And that's a trick I learned from one of my favorite dietitians of all time, Jeff Novick. The reason it works is because most people get around 2,200 calories a day, so if everything you ate had more calories than sodium, you'd at least slip under the 2,300 milligrams of sodium upper limit for healthy people under age 50. Of course, the healthiest foods have no labels at all. We should try to buy as much fresh food as possible, as it's almost impossible to come up with a diet consisting of unprocessed natural foodstuffs that exceeds the strict American Heart Association guidelines for sodium reduction.
And the last video is Kempner rice, Kempner diet, and whipping into shape.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt brought us through the Great Depression and World War II. Who knows how history would have been different had he not died in his 4th term as president from a massive stroke. In the following days and months, we learned that Roosevelt had suffered from severe high blood pressure for years. In spite of this, he was on no medications or other treatments. The reason for the lack of treatment is stark and simple. There were none. The state of the art at the time was death. Death from so-called malignant hypertension, out-of-control high blood pressure, for which it was thought there was no remedy. But they were wrong. There was Walter Kempner and his rice fruit diet. Physician-scientist trained with the best fled Nazi Germany and set up shop at Duke, where he began treating malignant hypertension patients with a radical diet consisting of only white rice and fruit, with strikingly favorable results. A rapid reduction in blood pressure, rapid improvement in kidney failure, eye pressure, heart failure, and other manifestations of this previously fatal illness. He figured that if a low-salt diet helped with blood pressure, a low-protein diet helped with kidney function, and a low-fat and cholesterol diet helped the heart, why not take it to its logical conclusion and design a no-salt, no-cholesterol diet of almost pure carbohydrate? So he designed a diet with less sodium than any low-sodium diet, less protein than any low-protein diet, and less cholesterol and fat than any other low-fat diet. His hope was that it would just stop the progression of the disease. Instead, something miraculous happened. In about 2/3 of cases, the disease reversed. Reversal of heart failure, reversal of eye damage, reversal of kidney failure. And remember, this was effectively a terminal disease. People just had a few months to live, but if they went on the diet, most got better. Before and after. The round pictures at the bottom are photographs taken of the back of people's eyes, starting out swollen, bloody, and leaking, and then nearly normal in a matter of months. Kidney disease cured. A striking fact is that in some patients, after being effectively cured by the diet over many months, they could then relax the diet to a more conventional plant-based diet and go on and live a normal, active life. The rice diet may actually drop blood pressures too low, so you have to modify it, add back other foods to bring the pressures back up to normal. An editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine described Kempner's results as little short of miraculous. Practically speaking, there's probably no more effective diet for obese, decompensated cardiac patients. The problem, though, is that most physicians lack the extraordinary persuasive powers required to keep the patient eating such a restricted diet. When Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn presented his study results, demonstrating in some cases reversal of near end-stage heart disease with a whole-food plant-based diet, the chair of Cleveland Clinic's cardiology department asked, how can we expect patients to stay on a strict diet like this when we can't even get them to quit smoking? Just like penicillin drugs don't work at all unless you take them, plant-based diets don't work unless you actually eat them. I think the answer is that the physician must have a zealous belief in the diet and must convey that passion to the patients. For Kempner to keep his patients on the rice diet, Kempner browbeat, yelled at, and castigated them when he caught them straying. And he didn't just browbeat them, he sometimes actually beat them. It came out in a lawsuit in which a former patient sued Dr. Kempner that he had literally whipped her with a whip and other patients to motivate them to stick to the diet. Reminds me of the famous diabetes physician Arnoldo Cantini, back in the 1800s, who knew that the remedy for diabetes is not at the drugstore, but in the kitchen. To ensure compliance, if necessary, he would lock a patient up for 6 weeks. Thankfully, in terms of personality, Dr. Esselstyn is the opposite of Dr. Kempner, polite, soft-spoken, gentle, able to keep his patients on track without whipping them. And last but not least, Esselstyn walks the talk, following the diet himself, whereas Kempner died of a heart attack, though at the age of 94. His work continues on in Durham, where they continue a relaxed version of the diet, allowing actual vegetables. A year before Roosevelt died, Kempner had already published his miraculous results. It seems highly likely that, had the rice diet been provided to President Roosevelt a year before his death, his disease might have been controlled before his fatal stroke, and that this fatal event could have been averted.
So I guess the moral of that story might be careful the doctor you choose. It may become a painful experience.
Yeah, Dr. Russellson's secret, he always says his secret to getting such good compliance with his patients is he gives them his time. So he gives them time, he gives them respect, and that's been the good formula for him. And of course, patients feel better.
Any thoughts from anybody? Hopefully you had some fun, learned a little bit tonight.
That was a cute video, but I think it was in the one before where, maybe it was in this one, where he repeated your, Charlie, you've said several times, let's do the calories ratio to the milligrams of salt. So I've been following that. What's the other way he said we could lower our salt consumption? I missed that. Besides eating less milligrams of salt than calories.
So if you have a serving, you eat, if the sodium is less than the calories per serving, then that's going to be okay. And the other way, I don't recall what that was. Scott,
I think it was, yeah, I think it was the grams of the serving, how much weight the serving was. So if it was 100 grams in a serving, then you'd want less than 100 milligrams of sodium. So it's kind of almost the same thing. But I think the biggest takeaway from that on the salt issue is just to avoid processed foods, because that's 70 to 80% of the salt intake is the processed foods. So if you're, and we even talked about in these classes, don't cook with salt, don't eat processed foods, but if you want to put just a pinch on the food at the table on your plate, then that's probably okay, because that's a very small amount compared to what you would use in your cooking, how much you would use if you're eating a processed food. So, but yeah, you can use all those other herbs and spices too instead of salt. So
I get a kick out of the broth you can buy at the store, vegetable broth. It's usually around 600 milligrams of salt per serving, which is, it's supposed to be health food, but it isn't. And then it's pretty watery. So they're just selling you water and salt. And then there's one brand of vegetable broth that's only like 150, but again, it's very watery. So, I make my own, I make a lot of it. I'm learning how to make it. I've found some recipes. I bake the stuff first and then stew it. And I cook without oil, and I use broth. I use broth for gravy. I use broth for everything that I make myself. And then I had one question, the whole thing is, I don't know if anybody said tonight, how much salt should we have per day in milligrams?
Yeah.
So the American Heart Association recommends under 1,200 milligrams a day is the maximum. Other guidelines will say 1,500 milligrams, but truly a low salt diet per the American Heart Association's 1,200 milligrams or less, which is like 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt is how much that would actually be.
That would kill me. That's too much. But I have a problem. Sometimes I have too low. I don't cook without salt, and I eat the food fairly bland. And what happens, sometimes I get so low that I can hardly walk. My muscles don't work anymore. And what I do, I take a Campbell's soup, chicken noodle soup, and just heat it up and eat it, and I'm fine. And the next day I'm normal with the blood pressure, no problem. But that's sometimes what I need a lot. But normally I do not like salt in my food. I can eat it without salt, but I have to be careful. A little bit I have to have, but not much. Just a sprinkle, that's it.
Well, the sprinkle is a half a teaspoon to
no,
3/4 total.
No, three little things.
You don't have to eat that much, but that's what they recommend, not to eat
Yeah,
over that.
no, I can't. My system is very sensitive in a lot of things.
Yeah.
A
And-
lot of food I cannot eat either.
One
I
thing,
get-
one thing for those of you who are restricting your salt is make sure you're getting some iodine in your diet, either through sea vegetable.
I made a note of that, and every morning I take the half of the iodine and take it with my vitamins. I
Okay.
learned that from you. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other thoughts?
Also, the brand, what was it? That teaspoonful. I can't take that either. It gets my bowels too loose, and no control over it. What's that called? I can't think of it right now. Just a minute.
Yeah. Could you please respond? We couldn't hear what you were saying about the sea vegetables. If you're not eating salt,
Yeah, if you're not eating salt, oftentimes you're not getting enough iodine in your diet. You want to make sure that you're eating some sea vegetable like dulse or wakame or nori. It's 150 micrograms for the day of iodine. You could get it in a multiple vitamin, or you could get it from some kind of vitamin. But again, if you're totally restricting your salt and not having any added salt, and if you're adding salt, use iodized salt if that's the only place that you're getting it from.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Nancy Horner.
Oh, yes. Hi. Lots of good information. As we've talked through the variability of moment by moment blood pressure, it sounds more and more as if even those of us who are in a mostly normal range might benefit from checking blood pressure at home just to establish a kind of baseline. And I don't have a machine, but do you have a recommendation about a home machine to use?
Yeah, I can. The Consumer Reports rates the highest rated blood pressure machine is called the Omron 10 series. So OMRON 10 series. And usually it's, a good sign that it's a good machine is if it goes on the upper arm, automatic, and they're usually about $60 or $70. I mean, they're kind of expensive, but those are the ones that tend to be most accurate. And so that Omron 10 series, it was Consumer Reports rated as the most reliable machine. That's what I recommend to patients. But yeah, maybe check it maybe once or twice a week. I don't recommend people take it very frequently because there is so much variability and it can kind of drive you crazy. So you just kind of take it, say twice a week, and take it under the same circumstances every day. So whether it's 10 minutes after you wake up in the morning and you're sitting in a chair for a few minutes, or whatever your conditions are, do it the exact same under the same circumstances and conditions every single time, because then you kind of get an average. Because if you check it sometimes after you've had your cup of coffee or after you've been up and around, and sometimes when you're resting, it's going to be all over the place. It could kind of drive you crazy. You can kind of obsess on your numbers.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that. So.
Yeah, actually, that would probably raise the blood pressure, right? Obsessing
Yeah.
over all of these measurements.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, it's not, so once someone writes not so easy to find nori without any oil, that's true that oftentimes sea vegetables are combined with oil. At the Asian stores, you may find it. I know that the dulse that we buy doesn't, at Whole Foods doesn't have oil in it. And I think you just need to look around a bit.
I have a problem here with flaxseed. I can't take flaxseed. I get loose bowels, and a lot of fruits I can't eat either. I get loose bowels with it.
So if you
Does
can't
it-
take flaxseed, you could do chia seeds, you could do walnuts, which give you omega-3s, you can do,
Walnuts will do the same thing.
so if, you can do, sea vegetables, have omega-3s like dulse, wakame and nori.
Got a lot of salt in it, doesn't it? I don't like a lot of salt.
I don't think that adults would have that much salt in it. You're not adding salt in anything, but you know,
Yeah, but I take the half pill of kelp. That's what I do every morning.
all
And
right,
it-
well, you're getting adequate iodine with that, I suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Abby and Doug,
Could you explain what does Dulse come as and how do you use it? I've not heard of that before.
comes in a package. I'll be right back in a second. It's somewhere here. So, Dr. Greger, can you see this at all?
Sort of, yes. Okay, there it is, yeah.
Okay, you can see this. This
Yes.
is the package size, and it's a 1 ounce package of Dulse. It's Rising Tide sea vegetable. We get it at Whole Foods. And you just, one package should last a month, according to Dr. Greger's recommendation.
Okay. You just crumble it on top of your food or?
So my wife takes a little strip and puts it in the steamed greens that we have in the morning. You could eat it raw if you like. It doesn't taste all that great, especially the first few times. It took me about 10 or 15 exposures before I'd eat it. The first time I tried it, I swore I'd never eat it again. And now I sort of crave it. So I would steam it, hide it in a soup, hide it in some steamed greens, and you'll get used to it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Nancy Werner. That was your hand from before.
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
No problem.
Sometimes I have to click it twice
Yeah.
before it behaves. Sorry.
No problem. Scott, this has been fun.
Right. Yeah, went way past. Hope everyone's still, most people are still here. We
Yeah.
can have an open forum next week and talk about more about blood pressure, heart disease, stroke. Yeah, we have an open forum next week. So bring your questions.
All right, everybody. Good
I
seeing
think I
you. Have a good
Y'all
week.
into movies
Okay.
without salt.
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye.
All right. Good